On May 24th, 1976, I happened to be in Paris. The previous week I had suggested to editors in New York a story on a wine tasting that was doing the unthinkable, comparing some of the greatest names in French wines with new and little-known California wines. It seemed like a non-event. Clearly, France would win. But as a native Californian, I had developed an interest in wine and had tried to learn something about European wines while studying or working in Switzerland, Germany, Belgium, and, of course, France. Each week, Time correspondents around the world suggest hundreds of stories. Only a few of the proposals are scheduled, and even fewer ever make it to press. It's a fierce survival of the fittest process, but the result is a lively, compelling publication. Although my story was scheduled, I knew that the odds of it getting into the magazine were long. If, as expected, the French wines won, there would be no story. But you never know, and a wine tasting, where maybe I'd get a chance to try a few of the wines myself, seemed, at the very least, like a perfectly wonderful way to spend an otherwise slow afternoon. The event was taking place at the Intercontinental Hotel, not far from the Time office just off the Champs-Élysées. In winter, I might have taken the metro there, but it was a beautiful spring day, so instead I walked through the immaculate gardens lining the Grand Boulevard toward the Place de la Concorde. I considered this the most beautiful part of the world's most beautiful city. There were monumental buildings, elegant people, and an exciting hustle and bustle. This was the epicenter of the city Gershwin put to music in An American in Paris. I strolled past the American Embassy and the Egyptian obelisk nicknamed Cleopatra's Needle in the Place de la Concorde to the Rue de Rivoli, and then under its arcades lined with fashionable shops displaying their wares. The Intercontinental, located on the Rue de Castiglione and bordered by the Rue de Rivoli and the majestic Place Vendôme, was one of the most fashionable hotels in Paris. It reeked of class and luxury. A hotel doorman directed me to the small, elegant room off the hotel's patio bar, where the tasting was to take place. As I entered, waiters in tuxedos were busily setting up the event, laying out tablecloths and distributing glasses. I knew the organizers of the tasting, Englishman Stephen Spurrier, who owned a nearby wine shop called the Caves de la Madeleine, and his sidekick, Patricia Gallagher, an American. I had taken an introductory wine course taught by Gallagher at the Académie du Vin, a wine school associated with the shop. Her personal plea was one of the reasons I had agreed to cover the tasting, which was designed to garner some publicity for the shop and school, but they were having a hard time getting any publications to take it seriously. In fact, I was the only journalist who showed up. After saying hello to Gallagher, I started taking notes in the brown plastic-covered book that I always carried with me. Soon the 9 judges began arriving. I knew none of them personally, but they had impeccable credentials and were among the leading wine experts in France. With the quiet formalism of the French establishment, the judges greeted each other with a handshake and then took their places along the long banks of tables. This was going to be a blind tasting, meaning the labels of the wines would not be shown. The judges would not know which wines they were tasting. They knew only that the wines were from France and California, and that the red wines were Bordeaux-style Cabernet Sauvignons, and the whites were Burgundy-style Chardonnays. Shortly after 3 p.m., a waiter began walking up and down a row of tables pouring wine from unmarked bottles. The judges had nothing in front of them except a scorecard, 2 glasses, and a petit pain, a small hard roll for nibbling on to clean the palate between wines. As is common in a wine tasting, the judges started with the white wines. It was a very informal event, so I was free to roam around the room as the judges tasted the wines. They were a little chattier than is normal at a tasting, where the experts usually quietly concentrate on the work at hand. About halfway through the white wine part of the competition, I began to notice something quite shocking. I had a list of the wines and realized that the judges were getting confused. They were identifying a French wine as a California one, and vice versa. Judges at one end of the table were insisting that a particular wine was French, while those at the other were saying it was from California.